what I'm looking for. And here's our agenda. Here it is. The first order is the public comment period, and anyone who wishes to speak before the board on any issue can step forward and state your name and your address, please.
My name is William DeBrooker, and I have a property located on Gedke Lane. I'm here to speak about the Nisbet-Stagmeyer application for a temporary CUP. I'm the only person that has a property back there a home, and I've got a few issues with it. Main issues being the mess. There's a lot of trucks parked back there, a lot of garbage packed back there, and it has negatively affected my property values. In the original packet, I had a letter from my realtor stating that the property value had definitely come down based on the mess at the end of the road. Based on the findings of fact from the last meeting, I also wanted to comment that they changed it from will have a effect on property owners to will not, based on the woods that is between my house and the property. But you have to go down the driveway, and every time you go down that driveway, you see this great big salvage yard mess at the end of the driveway. That leads me to my next issue I have with it. Is the fact that it is a salvage yard. He is storing stuff, and under his own admissions, he's going to be, once the markets come up, he says, he's going to be hauling it to the junkyard. Well, that by definition is a salvage yard. That's what Tim's Auto does. The other issue that I have is he's saying that it's an agricultural business. It's a truck repair. I mean, the only agricultural business he does is repair the occasional semi. That being said, I don't have a problem with Mr. Stagmeyer running a business. That's more power to him. I wish him the best. But I have a problem with it being at the end and along my driveway and devaluating my property. So I think, I think this application should be denied based on the history of Mr. Stagmeyer. This has happened before. Also in my packet that I included was an aerial photo of the last place that he was at. That garbage is going to continue. That salvage scrap is going to continue to pile up. He has a history of doing that, and there's nothing that can change that. As a matter of fact, I've heard that you can barely walk through the shop itself. So this is a salvage yard, and I would ask the board to look at it in that manner and take into account, our property. I mean, we are the only property owners that own a home that's even visible. The only way this got brought to the attention of the board is because, I called it in and talked to Eric. Otherwise, they would have continued to operate like they have before. And the rest of that junk, which, according to Mr. Bachenhauer, he has to get it out of there, so I don't know where he's putting it all. But it appears to me that it keeps piling up on the property. So I would just ask that the board take a good look at this and put yourself in my position. I didn't buy this property. I didn't build a home next to a salvage yard, and that's what I have now. So, thank you.
Does it look better today? Just kidding.
Because it's covered with snow. Yeah, covered in snow. Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before the board on any particular issue? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Randy Stagmeyer, 27396 McNally Ridge Road. That's where I reside. My shop is on Nisbet's property there. Yes, I've been running a business for 22 years now, repairing a lot of farm equipment, grain trucks. They haul grain, cattle. Yes, it is a lot of semis, but it's mostly 90% probably agriculture based. Takes time to. I was running to buy some trucks, part them out and stuff, but I'm quitting doing that. I haven't bought trucks for a couple of years now to part out. I do have some left down there, and once they are gone, they will be gone. The trailers that are there are for storage for parts. When I part them out, the parts go into a trailer, not sitting on the ground or anything outside. So Change my business. I just want to basically do engines is what my goal is from here on. And yes, I got to get rid of some trucks and stuff. I'm working on that. That'll be gone in the next few years. And when they're gone, I'm not buying any more trucks or anything. So I dissolve the business pretty much within the next 5 years. Just basically do engine work. Got several engines in the shop right now. Customers just bring me the engines. I'm rebuilding them, or they bring the trucks to me. As far as since the summer when I was moving a lot of stuff down, yes, it did look a lot worse, but it's a lot cleaner now. And a lot of stuff at Bachenauer's that is there, that is going to be sorted out. And in spring when I get back to it, I was working in the rain when it froze and stuff, and that's where I ended. So most of that stuff will be going right to the junkyard. There's more trailers that will be coming down for parts. And guess got any questions?
Can we ask questions at this time?
No, not usually.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for the third and final time, is there anyone wishing to speak before the board on any issue? Okay, the public comment period is closed. Approval of the county board minutes, the closed session of January 22nd.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the closed session board minutes for January 22nd, 2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, approved. Approval of county board minutes from the board meeting of January 22nd, 2019.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the county board minutes, board meeting minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the board minutes are approved. We're acknowledging receipt of approved committee minutes. We have the Board of Adjustment meeting from December 20th, 2018. That's on page 16 of the packet.
Move to acknowledge.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the approved county minutes for the Board of Adjustment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Approved, acknowledged. Okay, and the Planning Commission from October 18th, 2018.
Move to acknowledge.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to acknowledge the Planning Commission minutes from October 18th, 2018. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay. All right, consent comments and approval of agenda.
I don't have anything.
I do have an announcement
Okay.
for the end.
Okay.
Can we pull 6.1 to have further discussion based on the
Yes,
conversation?
6.1, item 6.1 will become 7.0. And I have an announcement also, so,
I don't have anything.
okay. And we will backtrack when Commissioner Ward comes in. She is on her way, we've been told, with the roads. I don't want her to speed or to hurry.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want her to hurry. Okay, so now we have approval of the agenda.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda as modified. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the agenda is approved. Administrator Fritz, will you read the consent business, please?
Yes, I will. Consent business, item 6.1's been pulled. Department recommendation 6.2, approved detention center interagency service agreement with Houston County. 6.3, accept child welfare juvenile justice screening 2019 grant award. 6.4, approve renewal of cooperative agreement for collaborative resources education service technology CREST initiative for 2019 to 2020 for allocating state financial resources to provide adult mental health initiative services. 6.5, approve adult and children's mobile crisis grant cooperative agreement for 2019-2020. 6.6, approve purchase of service agreement with Family Services Rochester, Inc. for Family Access Center and Family Involvement Strategy Services. 6.7, approve grant agreement with SEMCAC for prevention, education, screening, and treatment of STIs. 6.8, approve authorization of Planning and Environmental Services Director to sign BWSR financial reports. 6.9, award bid for County Road 129 reconstruction project to Fitzgerald Excavating, excluding construct electrical service bid item. 6.10, approve resolution for acquiring right-of-way for CASA 9, 12, 15, and 17. 6.11, approve resolution to acquire right-of-way for CASA 41. 6.12, approve donations received from 10/1/2018 to 12/31/2018. 6.12, approve closing fund 31 2009A bond and transferring remaining funds to fund 32 2010A bond. 6.14, confirm payment of disbursements, and that should be the end of the consent agenda.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the consent business as read.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the consent business. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, consent business is accepted. The first order of business is item 7.0, which was originally 6.1, and it starts on page 32 of your agenda if you're following in the print version. Okay. Commissioner Olson.
I guess Kay, if you'd want to come up, answer some questions.
Madam Chair, Commissioner.
Is there a reason if this pretty much meets the definition other than by the testimony of a salvage yard, why it's not being treated as such?
The petitioners did not apply for a salvage yard. The petitioners applied for an agriculture repair business, which is a conditional use permit. They applied for an IEP and for a 5-year period because that's the anticipated timeline for the business to end.
But if it meets the definition of something, even if that's not what the petitioner calls it, doesn't it still meet that definition?
I'm not exactly sure, how to respond to that. The site visit that I held with Eric Johnson indicated that a lot of the loose pieces of metal that were in evidence at the beginning of the proceedings had been gradually transferred into semi-trailers that were starting to be lined up on the property, and it did not appear that from our inspection and questioning of the petitioners to try to understand, what the business was likely to entail, it did not appear that selling individual parts or scrap metal appeared to be the goal of the petitioners. Repair of agricultural-oriented engines and trucks appeared to be the focus.
Yeah, excuse me, we're going to welcome Commissioner Ward. I hope the roads were not too scary for you. I'm glad you made it.
Well, I have to thank my township, actually was out unexpectedly early. And then one of Winona State, Minnesota State patrols escorted me into town.
Right.
So it was slow going, but it was safer going. So thank you.
Thank you very much for making that extra effort. We did start because we did have a quorum.
Yep, no problem.
So we can include you at any point in the discussion.
Okay.
We pulled item 6.1 from consent businesses.
Okay.
And that's where we are now. We're discussing that. We had 2 public speakers about that issue.
Okay.
And we'll just fold you right in if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I lost the speaking order. Chris, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah. I had some additional questions with respect to what Commissioner Olson was saying. So I was on the Planning Commission in October when this first came in front of the commission, and then I attended the Planning Commission meeting in January. So I believe we have a technical definition of what a salvage yard is.
Yes, and I do have that.
Could you share that with us?
Yes. Salvage yard, land or buildings where waste, recycled materials, discarded or salvaged materials are bought, sold, exchanged, stored, cleaned, packed, disassembled, or handled, including but not limited to scrap metal, rags, paper, rubber products, glass products, lumber products, and products resulting from the wrecking of automobiles and other vehicles. When a site exceeds the allowable amount of inoperable vehicles set forth in Chapter 9, the site shall be considered a salvage yard. The number of inoperable vehicles, I'll have to look at Chapter 9, but that definition, thank you, Chuck, I didn't have before me when Commissioner Olson asked his question, so thank you for bringing it up, Commissioner.
Yeah, and is it 3? Is that what I saw 3 fingers come up there? So it's 3, and it's 3 for 3 months. Is that right? I'm thinking back to, because this was the very point that we got to at that first Planning Commission meeting. Are there inoperable vehicles at the Nesbitt site now?
The nature of auto or truck repair is such that while awaiting parts, inoperable vehicles will be present. And in the effort of the Nisbet portion, trying to separate the two businesses, at any given time, sets of trucks that haul may be disabled temporarily and may appear to aggregate, but 2 separate businesses are running there. So the possibility does exist of more than 3 inoperable vehicles because of the presence of 2 businesses. But as parts arrive and roll in, our understanding and representations were made that then those vehicles are hauled inside, repaired, and gotten back on the road for either the clients of the repair shop or for the Nisbets.
And I did have if you have more questions that you'd like to ask the planning director, that's great. I did have a question for Mr. Stegmeyer, if that's,
Okay.
but I can wait on that.
Trailer storage. So how many, so you could just park unlimited number of trailers to store parts in? They become junk or?
Madam Chair and Commissioner, the original proposal by staff that went with Planning Commission docket number 1-171901 included a condition number 4 of exterior storage with sort of a drawdown of numbers of trailers and trucks for just the Stagmeyer side of things, of course, because that's what is in question. And commencing with on or before June 1st, 2019, no more than 18 trucks and trailers owned by Randy Stagmeyer shall be stored. Then a drop down to 12, then 8, and then on or before April 1st, 2024, when the IUP would term limit out, if you will, all trucks and trailers owned by Randy Stagmeyer shall be removed. The planning commissioners voted to eliminate and strike that portion from the conditions imposed. Another thing that was under discussion at the Planning Commission meeting that may be germane, I just want to insert, if I may. Typically for something like this, we would ask that evergreen screening be planted, that type of thing. However, for 5 years, and the size evergreens as placed in the zoning ordinance, you're not going to get screening within that time period. To get more specifically to your question, Commissioner, the amount of storage was restricted in the final to 0.7 acres. So it would be like a staked out area of lined up, in effect, creating a wall that would be taller than evergreens would attain in a 5-year period. So that was where it was left. The screening was not added because it was felt that it wouldn't be effective, and within a 5-year period that the trailers would then be gone. So that was where it was left.
Okay, any more discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Qualley. If at any time in the 5-year period of the interim use permit, we should feel like it is being operated as a salvage yard, that there are more than 3 inoperable vehicles and that they have been there for longer than whatever the period of time is, what would the recourse be?
Inspections from the department, based on tracking software that we're in pursuit of, so that we can track the conditions of conditional use permits and IUPs more specifically to make sure that the petitioners are in compliance with what the county board has voted upon, will take place. But in addition to that, complaint-based inspections are done on a regular basis too. And the IUP could be revoked. Proceedings could take place, to indicate that the conditions of the IUP have not been respected by petitioners of any IUP or any CUP as well. Excuse me.
Okay. Commissioner Ward.
And I apologize for not getting into the whole flow. I have discussed at one time, I've been a landlord at one time in another jurisdiction, and there was a distinction that vehicles that were stored there had to have current tabs instead of just this inoperable, portion. So I don't know if that's something that we want to investigate, because we do get some places that get a lot of storage and a lot of things. And, if you have to have current tabs and plates on, means that they're probably running, or maybe they should be gone. That may be something we want to look at in the future as a change. I don't know if it's good or bad. Haven't really researched it, but that's something that we may want to look at. And then again, we talk about the trailers and stuff. It's discretionary to some people. That's economic. That's income. That's a resource, and to some other people, it's junk. So it's subjective as to what some property should be and some property shouldn't be. So it's difficult and for us to make judgment as to what is allowable is difficult.
Madam Chair, might I just add one thing to Commissioner Ward's comments?
Sure.
Throughout my career, I have been, taught that an inoperable vehicle does not have current tabs. And I don't believe that would cause us to need any kind of change. If it doesn't have current tabs, it's defined as inoperable, is my understanding. Thank you.
Yes. I think it seems to me that the vehicles coming in for repairs would have operable tags, and the trailers that are used as storage would not. So that's the issue. It also seems that if you look at the definition of the salvage yard, it says land or buildings. So these trailers are being used as buildings that store products from the wrecking of vehicles. So he's storing auto parts, and I know I also attended the Planning Commission meeting in January where this was discussed, and there was quite a lot of discussion from the Planning Commission on condition number 4, which in the original planning packet is on page 29. That's the planning packet from the Planning Commission meeting. And I made a note here that this limit keeps, I put RS, Randy Stagmeyer, from being a salvage yard. So in other words, if we had kept that condition in the list of conditions that were being applied to the CUP, to the IUP, then that would have modified the fact that it seems like it's running as a salvage yard. I also remember discussion directly saying that he does sell parts to people who don't come in for repairs. So I remember that discussion from the January meeting also. So it seems to me that one thing we could do would be to put this condition that was developed by staff in order to keep it from being designated as a salvage yard. We could put that condition back into the list of conditions, and we could consider that. The other issue I have is if it is a salvage yard, which there's been some discussion and the definition is pretty clear, are there different compliance issues that have to be met? Do the fluids have to be drained? What about the cleanly, the issue of, I understand the trailers are keeping the parts inside, so they're acting like a building. So you don't see the parts sitting on the ground, and the parts are being stored safer. But it's still, I don't know if it would meet different compliance issues. Is DNR involved in that, or?
Madam Chair, the Pollution Control Agency would definitely be involved. The township acknowledgement form, would likely, need to be resubmitted, a whole different petition. The state fire marshal and yes, you're correct, the DNR would also be involved.
And that's for public safety in terms of water or groundwater or just whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
The solid waste management plan was adopted by the Planning Commission, making sure that there was a safe disposal of solid waste materials such as waste oil and so on. That was passed as part of the conditions. That waste material is one of the chief concerns associated with salvage yards. Salvage yards also have a screening requirement for something that is going to end in 5 years. There's a lot of hoops to jump through for a salvage yard, but a lot of the conditions in 9.1.13 associated with dumpsters, trash handling, recycling, and enclosures in a good state of repair and so on would be covered by the solid waste plan for this particular petitioner's permit if the IUP is granted.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep up.
Commissioner Olson and then Commissioner Meyer.
So how many years, to your knowledge, has it been running at this location as a scrap business?
To my knowledge, it's been running as a repair business with parts and pieces coming from his previous site of operation and being aggregated prior to them being inserted into trailers. So the process of moving, I believe, has been going on throughout the last 12 months. So the site has changed rapidly from the first time I viewed it and from viewing it up close with Eric Johnson, zoning administrator, who greets you from his home where he's plowed in at the moment. But the site has been evolving, let's just say, as this business has been transitioning from a previous site with less interior storage in trailers than is currently evidenced on the site.
Okay, I have a follow-up question if you. The previous site, were there complaints or what were the issues on the previous site?
I have seen the satellite that the adjacent land owner who spoke this morning, Mr. DeBurker, has submitted, as well as seeing it on our own beacon. And there was a lot of material strewn about that was not in the trailers that are currently being populated with the material brought over from the original site, or the former site, I should say.
And was that site issued a CUP or an IUP, or well, we didn't have IUPs at that time?
Correct, Madam Chair. That site was issued an after-the-fact CUP.
As a salvage yard or as a repair business?
As a repair business, not as a salvage yard.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yep, nope, that's
Commissioner
okay.
Meyer.
I think I have three things. So a trailer is not a vehicle, I think.
Right, it's not.
Right, so the trailers don't count towards the count of three. I wanted to know, where in the packet were you looking so that I could catch up with you in terms of what, maybe you could just read it out, the proposal that you felt that was dropped?
Okay, this was, did you have three questions? I can read that out.
I do. The third one is when Mr. Stegmeyer gave his public comments, he was talking about how he used to buy, I think it was junk vehicles. I think they're probably tractors for like semis, but that he was quitting that part of the business. And so that what I was unclear about is if there are still some of those tractors inoperable, not licensed, that count towards the three at the Nesbitt site, or if they're all still at the other site, because I'm trying to ascertain what's at the current site and if is a junkyard, right? If it's a salvage yard right now or not. I'm just trying to get that in my mind clear. Those are the three things.
Okay. I'm reading from the Winona County Planning Commission agenda of January 17th. It's on page 29 of the Planning Commission packet from that date.
So we don't have that in our package.
No, because this was not included as a final condition. And it says the petition for the interim use permit, and then it says until the following date or particular event, that's June 1st, 2024, or upon cessation of business activities or upon a change in operators or property ownership. And it says it allowed the Planning Commission itself to discuss the findings, and it offered the following, how many? 8 conditions. It says, as long as the following conditions are met. So this is condition number 4, which the Planning Commission did strike after considerable discussion. Condition number 4 states, exterior storage for trucks, trailers, parts, and equipment be limited to the area designated on the site plan and shall be subject to any applicable state or local regulation. Exterior storage for trucks and trailers shall be limited and reduced as follows. And there's 5, there's a time limit. Storage of trucks and trailers owned by David Nisbet shall be limited to 5 trucks and 10 trailers. On or before June 1st, 2019. Mr. Nisbet is the sharing the business site, and he has trucks and trailers. And then on or before June 1st, 2019, no more than 18 trucks and or trailers owned by Randy Stagmeyer shall be stored. And it goes on to June 1st, 2020, no more than 12 trucks and or trailers owned by Randy Stagmeyer shall be stored. And by June 1st, 2022, no more than 8 trucks. And on or before April 1st, 2024, all trucks and trailers owned by Randy Stagmeyer shall be removed. And these are not the trucks that come in for repairs. These are the trailers used for storage. Commissioner, I think we could put that condition back into the proposal. Commissioner Ward?
Well, this is an ongoing business. It has great value to a community. If you've ever looked at replacing parts and pieces and trucks and large equipment, there is a lot of parts that can be reused. And having, some small farm equipment, I can appreciate that. So the condition is here the first part of 4 is here. To really ask them to scale back, and that's a pretty aggressive scale back proposal. That's, in a way, I'm thinking that's telling us, well, we don't want you in business anymore. We're really restricting you. We're telling you, no, you got to get rid of this and this and this by this and this timeline. So we're not encouraging him to maintain his business or his growth in business. We're restricting. We're saying you're going to downsize considerably, and I don't think that's our prerogative to tell a business to stop doing business. The IUP has a five-year timeline. It can be renewed. It can be modified. It can be transferred, correct? If a new person, no, they have to apply. A new ownership would have to apply for a new IUP.
Madam Chair, might I answer Commissioner Ward's question? Commissioner Ward, the IUP would expire upon cessation of business activities or upon a change in operators or property ownership. So let's just say Mr. Stagmeyer decided that 3 years and he's not going to continue in this line of business, and the Nisbets wish to have someone else come in this sort of capacity, that individual, or if the Nisbets chose to hire someone in the umbrella of their business to run this kind of repair business, they would need a new IUP at that point.
Need a new one. And again, that's really restricting a private business. I mean, if you're building a business and trying to make it economically viable, you decide you want to retire, you try and sell your business. You don't just close it up. It has some value. So again, to downscale it on that and aggressive, I feel is wrong. I think if they can keep it neat and clean, I do prefer to have the parts stored inside. It just is neater and cleaner. Or they're going to have to get a herd of goats to do weed management, because that's always a problem. And people don't realize, if you don't have these parts stored inside, they deteriorate. The value of the part deteriorates. So it's to their credit to put these parts in storage to keep them good and resellable. So I guess I would be comfortable with 4 as it is, and not putting that aggressive, restrictive downsizing policy on there, or condition on there.
So I have a question, Commissioner Ward. When you say the condition number 4 that I read, which has the timeline, is here, where are you
Well, it's on
referring to?
our packet, page 38. It is condition 4. It's the first probably 2 sentences or first sentence of that, but it doesn't put an aggressive downsizing plan.
Okay, I'm also finding it on page 42 also.
Oh, okay, yeah, we got lots of pages.
It has the findings of
Oh,
fact
okay, yeah. And I'm reading
the official,
8 condition.
okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to insert one quick note under not what was approved, but what was proposed by staff. Just to point out that 4A that you read regarding the Nisbets trucks and trailers, because the Nisbets were not part of the petition and this was not part of their business.
Yeah.
That was one reason why that was removed from the ultimate number 4. I just felt it incumbent upon me to make note of that.
That's why I noted that it was David Nisbet's business that they're sharing. So, and that was not before the Planning Commission, so that shouldn't be in there. It seems to me, I have some questions about keeping it neat and clean. That's the definition of the condition number 4 with the timeline. That keeps it neat and clean. I think also we need to keep it safe, and that's occurs when you go into the area of the salvage yard and the additional compliance issues. So seems like our discussion, we have possibly 2 options and possibly more. We can approve it by adding the timeline condition, which would define neat and clean, as Commissioner Ward has discussed, or we could return it and ask it to go through the process of being designated as a salvage yard, which by definition, that's where we are. So does anybody have any further? Commissioner Olson.
Just got one further question. The facility itself, the building in which the repairs are done, does that have any oversight for flammable waste trap, that type of thing, for drainage, floor drainage, to catch any contaminants that might be going down a floor drain?
I didn't observe anything at the time because that wasn't what I was looking for, because a condition on solid waste management plan was adopted by the Planning Commission. Our plan was to have our solid waste officer, Ann Morris, do an inspection with the MPCA just to make sure that they were in compliance with all waste oil, catch, and that kind of thing. So I felt like it would be covered under that, and we would commence that once we had a determination from the board.
MPCA would regulate that.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so what is the status with respect to the 60 days for the request? I mean, one of the suggestions that you had, Commissioner, was to send it back to the Planning Commission. I'm sure there's time to do that.
No, I don't think that there is.
If we denied it and then sent it back, that would be a way to do that. Because this CUP does not address the salvage yard issues.
So I'm struggling with this. We had this discussion in October, and we're advised that it's not a salvage yard. So I'm still struggling with that issue. I don't know that it is.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, this was tabled once with the Planning Commissioner, so, we would be up against timeline concerns for automatic approval.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
Well, and again, this has gone through planning twice. Yeah, two times. It's here. I hope that for the neighborhood, we can, keep it neat and clean, and I think that all the parties are here with the trailers, organizing the trailers and everything. The conditions are here. It's an IUP, so it has a timeline. So I would move to approve it as the Planning Commission recommended with the 8 conditions.
And those are the conditions on page 42 in our packet.
I'm looking at, is that the, I apologize, I haven't read them verbatim to compare.
Yeah.
I'm going off of page 38, and I think they are. The number 4 is the same, and I think that was the one that you just read. I believe they are the same.
Yeah, on page 40, it says the Planning Commission recommended, and it states that it approves it. And then it follows on page 41 with the findings of fact, and then it follows on page 42 with the following conditions.
Right, so we'll go with
and defining it as a IUP.
IUP.
Yeah.
Yes, so we'll use the conditions listed on page 42.
Okay, is there a second? We have a motion to approve the IUP application as presented on page 40 and 41 and 42 from the Planning Commission directly, listing the findings of fact and the following 8 conditions. Is there a second? Okay, the motion dies for lack of a second. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah. So, could you refresh for me now? Again, I apologize since I don't have the Planning Commission's. What is there language in there that gives us the neat and clean? What is that?
That would be the original condition number 4 that was included by staff recommendations. It says exterior storage for trucks, trailers, parts, and equipment. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Because it's a long one and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
technical.
So there's
It provides a timeline, basically, starting June 1st, 2019, to reduce the number of trucks and/or trailers. And then it goes to 2020, 2022, and 2024.
So it doesn't say that all the parts have to be inside the trailers. Is there, does all the stuff have to be inside the trailers?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, exterior storage would be pieces, parts, and anything else on a site. So I think that the word exterior storage in number 4 might cover that. I might also note, if I may, that if cleaning up the other site generated 30 trucks, say, or trailers rather, and planting season takes place, we have a 0 when the IUP ends, and we have some sort of starting point. With obviously right now, it would be a challenging day to be working on this. So without being an advocate for or against this petition, I just want to mention that, there might be up to double the amount of trailers that would need to be pared down in a very short number of months for the first point, which staff was unaware of what the total number was, and I'm still not quite sure, but we have the petitioner here that we could ask if the county board wants that information.
Yeah. I recall that at the meeting, Mr. Stegmeyer did say he didn't think that he could meet that first requirement. But when he was asked, he really didn't specify that he could meet any of them, but that's just my recollection. So, I'd be kind of interested in seeing something that says, yeah, all the parts have to be stored inside of trailers. And I might be open to some kind of limit on the trailers. I don't know if it needs to step down, but I don't know that it has to be as restrictive as what was originally put out there. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I feel.
my original notes from the January meeting on that discussion of 2019, meeting that deadline, I say, according to the petitioner, not reasonable. And then there's discussion. He offers to drop 10 trailers every year for 5 years. And then he said he can remove trucks in 1.5 years. And then there's a note that says 5 trailers a year is reasonable. And my final note says it's not clear how many he can drop to by June 2019. Which are after all that discussion, it was very not clear. But it was clear that that could be a negotiable item. Okay, Commissioner Ward, sorry.
Yeah, so on the conditions, okay, so is this now you've got me totally, is this a petition for both the Nisbet and Stagmeyer? So, again, who, in your verbiage, you have both the petitioners, and then both are listed, but who technically, are they both on the IUP, or is it just the Nisbet?
I don't have the original application before me right now.
Okay, I'm looking at page 32 of our packet.
Which
and
I
under
don't
this-
have.
Okay, under the summary of the issue, the petitioners, David and Sherry Nisbet and Randy Stagmeyer.
Yeah, that's my recollection, Commissioner.
Okay, so again, we're talking about who we hold accountable. So are all three parties to be held accountable? Because then in these conditions that Commissioner Kavesi talks, the first one is David Nisbet, 5 trucks, and then the other 4 are all Randy Stagmeyer. So again, who are we trying to hold accountable for all these trailers and trucks? It's unclear to me now at this point with this discussion, who we're holding accountable.
The actual CUP says owner name David and Sherry Nisbet, and then next to it has Randy Stagmeyer. It says interim use permit to allow Randy Stagmeyer to operate his business on our property as a mechanic. So number of employees is Randy himself, and that's signed by Sherry and David Nisbet.
Madam Chair, if you need.
Yes.
Maybe we need a Attorney
Commissioner.
Sonneman to say, who would we hold accountable?
Well-
The issue is accountability.
Commissioner, the property owner,
Clarify who the application is.
the property owners in an inspection protocol would be held accountable. They have a business arrangement with Mr. Stagmeyer on their property. So just like a CUP, an IUP, we would be dealing with the property owners of the parcel in question.
Okay.
And this would run with the property, because CUPs run with the property.
This is an
I know
IUP.
it's an IUP, but, so.
So it won't run with the property. It has an expiration date.
Yeah.
Yep,
We would hold the property owners liable,
correct.
but a lot of the the vast majority of the trailers are not their property.
Not the Nisbet's property or
Right,
not?
because it says it's Randy, in your reference to the downsizing of the operation, that all says Randy Stagmeyer. So they're
Right.
not- So there again, from a legal standpoint, if I own property, but I'm leasing property for somebody to do the business, unless I have it in the leasing agreement that you do this, I can't, that's personal property. I can't remove it, I can't confiscate it.
Yeah.
So
Is
that's,
there an agreement that's been reviewed?
I hate to make this more complicated than it needs to. Guy just wants to fix equipment for people and make a living. And I support people making a living and doing business. So, but again, it didn't receive a second, so I can't remake my motion.
Okay, Commissioner Olson.
Maybe Mr. Stagmeyer could answer some of these questions and we could get this finalized. Are there any of these conditions that the chair had brought up that were in the original discussion that with some modifications you could meet so we could put an end to this?
Like I told Eric before the last meeting, I started out with like 65 units, trucks and trailers. I'm down to probably 52 or so. There's 10 trailers at the other shop yet. 3 of them are empty to clean out the shop yet and stuff of my parts in the shop yet. I buy a lot of parts, buy from Peterbilt and Caterpillar parts. People come to me through the weekend and stuff because all the stores are closed. So yes, I sell a lot of parts. It's new parts. It's not just all parts they've taken off the trucks, but there is a share of that. I'm not looking for a salvage permit. I've been running this business. I had a conditional use permit 10 years ago at Bachenauer's. I've had no complaints. So yes, it's gonna be cleaned up, Bill, so it's gonna take time. It's a growing pain. It's gonna be a mess for a little while, and like Kay and Eric were out last fall, yes, it was a mess, because I had some trucks that I bought, and for the motors, and it's cheaper to buy the whole truck than it is to buy one component. So the profit there is a lot better, but I'm quitting that, so you won't have that anymore. So I've got some trucks up there yet I need to repair and get down the road. People are wanting them trucks.
I understand that, and I appreciate the fact that you're in business and doing this, and it's certainly a needed business, and thank you for that. Are there any, as far as that timeline goes, is there, with some modifications that were originally discussed that are not in the conditions today, but we could add them, but we'd like to do so that would appease both William here, Bill, and you, where you could say, okay, I can meet those, not on these aggressive timelines, but on a modified timeline.
Right.
So that we could just get this resolved. I think that would perhaps appease both of you.
Like I said, like a year and a half or so, I should have all the trucks out of there. It just takes time. Summertime I can do it, the wintertime I can't.
Are you talking about trailers also?
No.
No.
Talking
Those are
about-
licensed trailers and stuff those are gonna get liquefied too, as soon as I get rid of the parts and stuff and downsize. So
Do you have
it takes time.
Do you have a timeline on any of that?
That's the only drawback is I'm on call to go down to the farm. My dad's got a farm that's, he's by himself down there, and when I get a call, they gotta go. So I was down there a couple days this week with cattle and stuff, so do my best, and I don't know what time or how to put, five trucks, probably 10 trucks or better are gonna be gone this summer. So it'll get downsized real quick.
With trucks, but not trailers.
Trailers gonna be there until I get the trucks done. There are gonna be more parts put in the trailers.
Okay,
Yeah, okay, so
Commissioner Meyer.
when you say trucks, are you saying that there are like semi-tractors, inoperable ones without a license?
Yes.
That you're taking parts from, and that that you're saying that you would get down to 5 of them this summer?
Probably not down to 5, maybe 10.
Okay, so, all right, the issue that I have was that makes it a salvage yard, by definition, yeah, I believe. So, the second thing is then, let's say that, to Commissioner Olson's point, let's say that we said, hey, we want you to get down to 20 trailers, and we want all the stuff stored inside the trailers, and that's it. And maybe could you do that by 2020, right? So you have a year and a half or, 2 years, whatever. Would that be acceptable to you? Could you do that?
Put my best forward towards it, yes.
Great, okay.
Put it dependent on the price of scrap metal. Scrap metal goes up, they're gone. Scrap
Well,
metal
what's
stays-
left at Backenhauer's, I got the dumpster out there right now that's gonna go.
Yeah, if scrap metal would go up, you'd see a lot of landscape cleaned
Yeah,
up.
probably,
It's
yeah.
all dependent.
But I'm not relying on that.
No.
I'm gonna handle it once, it's gonna go to the junkyard.
Yeah.
The good parts that are there will go in the trailers and be brought down.
But I mean, the price of scrap does help make that decision.
Yes. Or not for me really, because I always hit at the wrong time. So, and the place, Dylan's out there mowing every week around them trailers and everything else, so it's gonna be kept up clean.
So are we still talking about adding conditions with possibly one condition that says he would reduce it to 20 trailers with all parts stored inside by June 1st, 2020? That seems to be something that was proposed, and you answered that you would try to meet that deadline?
My best foot forward, yes.
Okay. So that's a reasonable deadline?
It's a reasonable
more or
one.
less. Yeah. Okay.
So I would make a motion that we add that condition.
Could we, would you consider modifying, June 1 is, I mean, depending on the spring and the weather and everything is pretty, I think, giving a person the summer to clean something up is maybe more realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, June 1 we can still be, fighting, bad weather and everything, so.
August?
August or September?
The fall or whatever.
Yeah, the fall, I would
Have
think.
2 summers to clean it up would be
Okay.
feasible.
September 1st, 2020. Is that agreeable?
Yeah.
The maker of the motion? Okay, so we have a motion that we add a condition. We need a second.
Oh, I'll
Do you
second.
want me to restate the motion?
yeah.
The motion is that the Stagmeyer business could reduce to 20 trailers with all parts stored inside by September 1st of 2020. So do we have a second for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay. So is there further discussion? We would be adding a 9th condition that would read, the Stagmeyer business would reduce to 20 trailers with all parts stored inside by September 1st, 2020.
So, I'm sorry, what'd you do with the trucks?
Yeah. Well,
You just said trailers.
Yeah.
And all these things say
Did you-
truck and
Was the
trailer.
original language with trailers and trucks? I'm sorry.
It
I-
was.
Okay,
Yeah,
then we'll
trailer
add
or
trucks and trailers.
Okay.
Okay. With all 20 trailers or trucks and trucks, with all parts stored inside by September 1st, 2020. Is that
yeah,
agreeable?
yeah.
Okay, so that would be the new condition number 9. And I'm looking at page 42, which is the final. Yeah. Okay, are we ready to vote? Any further discussion?
Does that,
I can have some trucks then, you saying now, or it's
Right.
not up there?
you can have
20
20
Trucks and
combination,
Trucks.
truck and trailer.
I am concerned about this thing, that we have a definition of what a salvage yard
It
is.
says 3, yeah.
And it says 3. I was cool with the trailer thing, but I don't really know how to address the truck thing. But if it's a salvage yard, it is a salvage yard, and I don't know how else to.
Well, to me, the definition of a salvage yard included exterior storage, which that's what the trailers are doing, is providing exterior storage. It didn't say trailers, it said buildings. But these are temporary buildings. They use them as temporary schoolrooms. They use them as all kinds of things.
Multi-use.
Yeah. So we're back to the salvage yard definition.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Because 20 trailers and trucks would be considered a salvage yard.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yes.
really feel like the trucks need to go in 3 months, right?
Yeah.
Well, but we heard the trucks have usable parts on them, so, I mean, and
Which
he
is
is
in the definition of-
repair
yeah.
and the, business of using those, and they have value. So asking him to get rid of that value in his operation is,
I totally get that,
Is-
Commissioner Ward.
yeah,
I
is-
totally do, but if it's
yeah.
a salvage yard, it needs to be licensed as a
Yes.
salvage yard.
Yes. That's in the definition of the salvage yard. It's land or buildings where you store cleaned and stored products from the wrecking of vehicles or, and you intend to sell them.
well,
So-
if you could, again, and it depends on economy and workload and all these things. If the operation can't reduce the number of trucks by the 2020, then they have to come and get a salvage yard permit.
But that's in the application now, so we could deny this application and ask him to refile as a salvage yard, if that's the business. And
Well, no,
it
would
seems
be-
like
in my opinion, it would
that
be
is-
an additional IUP or CUP.
that he
He could go ahead and.
refile as a salvage yard.
Yeah.
So we'd have condition number 10?
No, that would just, if it doesn't happen on this timeline, then the petitioner would have to come back and ask for a salvage yard permit. If he can meet the conditions, and get down to, what's the 3? Is the trucks 3?
It's in the- that's
Okay,
in the-
if he can get down to
Trucks
3
or
trucks.
trailers.
Yeah, well,
Because it's a storage building.
Right.
and see, that definition in this modern day, I mean, you can go on, you can buy semi-trailers for storage. And as you said, people make houses out of them, they use them for storage, they use schools. So the idea of a trailer has changed since maybe this definition was written, or we adopted it. I guess I'm trying to let him do his business,
Yeah, and I would like that too.
attempt to clean it up. The trailers, I don't see as salvage, I see as storage. And maybe we need to look at that definition. And then if he can't meet that condition by 2020, then we address it then with maybe an additional.
But that would be an after-the-fact
And we do that.
CUP. And he's already had one after-the-fact CUP from the Utica site.
But that was a different location, yeah.
Well, it's history.
With no complaints, as indicated. There were no complaints or no issues.
That doesn't make it safe, though, if there's
No,
no
but I mean-
complaints, because it had no oversight, so.
Well,
yeah.
if you're working in the automotive, and I'm not sure the state of Minnesota rules, but if you're working with automotive and such, you do get MPCA. And do you have to have a permit from the state of Minnesota for any kind of repair business or anything? Okay. I dealt with Wisconsin, and we had different, there were different rules and stuff.
Okay, we have a motion.
I do, I have another,
Okay.
I guess I would like to ask council about this question of Marshall's proposal that, okay, so if it is still a salvage yard in 2020, do you see a legal consequence for us doing that as opposed to addressing this?
Right now?
Yes.
Well, I guess, if you make it you're making it a condition that all of this be basically cleaned up by September 1st. I think you could, for practical purposes, and this is my practical side saying this, that you also put in a condition that if it's not cleaned up, then they would have to come back for a salvage yard permit.
The motion allows 20 trailers or trucks, which would still meet the definition of a salvage yard.
The motion allows at the end of September?
Yeah, by September 1st, 2020, he would reduce it down to 20 trailers and
Well,
trucks.
then I would ask Ms. Qualley, in her position as the planning director, is that under the ordinance, in your interpretation, considered a salvage yard then? Or do we have to look at the definition of trailers and trucks? I mean, like Commissioner Ward, I can think of a lot of trailers that people use for storage, in fact, in the city of Winona. So, and
I've seen some very
talking
upscale
about
homes
15
being built out of trailers.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're limited to 3. Yes.
That's
Otherwise, they're a salvage yard, yes.
Madam Chair
Yes.
and Council Commissioners, trailers are not addressed in the definition of salvage yard. Parts disassembled or handled. Not every auto repair company is a salvage yard that has parts that are, sold. As a single proprietor of an engine repair, which is, it's transitioning from truck repair to engine repair, having 3 inoperable vehicles, to rotate in and out while waiting for parts, does not seem excessive. Having 10 or 20 that you're, waiting to rotate that have tabs, that are operable, seems like an overwhelming workload for one individual that's also farming. So if there are 3 inoperable vehicles inoperable because of being disabled but not because of tabs, rotating in and out while waiting for parts seems like the definition of, a vehicle repair place. 20, or more trucks would seem like an overwhelming workload, but I'm just offering an opinion here. Salvage yard does not discuss, it doesn't discuss trailers, but it also talks about products resulting from the wrecking of automobiles and, that aspect of things, and I don't think that's an element of this business as I viewed or as has been represented at any rate.
Is it part of the element of the business, though? Is it you buy new parts and used parts?
I buy both.
Yeah.
New and used parts from different places.
Okay, so you would have some inoperable vehicles on the site to store those? Yes, and that's what we're discussing is what that number is, because by definition of a salvage yard, you'd be limited to 3.
But not the trailers.
Yeah, I don't think a trailer
See,
is.
Kate just said the trailers aren't defined
That was
in
her
our salvage.
opinion.
It's not in the
in
definition
the
of salvage yard, and trailers themselves are not operable vehicles. I just offer that. Thank you.
Right.
So, pardon me.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah,
Commissioner
okay, so
Meyer.
I'm offering that perhaps we could make a specific comment about the inoperable vehicles, right? And separate that from the 20 trailer count.
Right, yeah.
Just to make that clear.
So what kind of specific, should we vote, well, let's talk about this specific comment. Commissioner Olson?
If I think about my motion was just to add this condition, it wasn't
Right.
to then approve the application.
Okay,
So I think that if we can jump this hurdle, then we can
Then we
get
can
to
talk
that next
about
section
what
and
has
say
to
that,
happen.
maybe an additional condition would be you'd have to go to a salvage yard if you don't meet it by this time.
So, Commissioner Olson, would you be open to this idea of just fine tuning your amendment to separate the count of trucks from the count of trailers, I think?
It sounds like trailers, we shouldn't be discussing trailers. That's not in our definition.
I would agree that if the trailers aren't in the definition, I mean, I know how I view them, but if they're not defined and we're trying to stick to our definitions, I mean, and by definition, you mean a salvage yard. And we're going to say that if you don't make it, it looks like a salvage yard, it's acting like a salvage yard, it's walking like a duck, it is a duck. But we're going to give you till 2020 to turn it into a chicken. I'm just trying to appease the legitimate concern that was brought forward, and and we do have a definition that you kind of meet. And we're trying to give you the benefit of the doubt and saying if you can do this, then if not, then we would add that condition. We'll add that condition, perhaps another motion.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to add a condition number 9 that would say Mr. Stagmeyer would reduce to 20 trucks and trailers,
Just
trucks,
no
Don't,
trailers.
just trailers.
just trailers. Okay.
Those aren't defined.
All right, with all parts stored inside by September 1st, 2020. So that's what we would be voting on, to add that as a condition, and then continue to discuss the IUP in general.
So Commissioner Olson made that motion?
Yes,
I will second it.
okay. Is there further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to add a new condition number 9, which would reduce to 20 trailers with all parts stored inside by September 1st, 2020. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. So we have a new condition 9.
All right, so I will,
So now we're back to the original IUP,
so I'll move to add this new condition. Then 10, a 10?
number 10, okay.
Yeah, that addresses, and I don't have the wording in my head, but that really addresses the issue that if it remains a salvage yard, by having more than three or more? More than three. 3 or more inoperable vehicles by that same date, which was September 1st of 2020, okay, then the petitioner would need to come back and ask for a salvage yard permit.
Okay, do we have the motion is that if 3 or more inoperable vehicles are on the property by September 1st, 2020, then the petitioner would have to apply for a salvage yard permit or salvage yard activity on the property. Is there a second before we discuss?
I'll second that.
Okay. Now, is there any discussion on that motion?
Yes. In our rules and definitions, has a little history with salvage yards and vehicles. Is there a certain time frame you can have them on your property to quote, disassemble, take something off, and then, turn it around to remove it?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Ward, it's 3 months.
Okay, all right, so just so everybody knows that if the truck would, say, become available, they could bring it to the property, they could take off whatever parts or anything, and you'd have 3 months to have that vehicle there.
Would you feel better, Commissioner Ward, if included the three, that those have been there for longer than,
Well, if it's in our rules and.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm really just trying to address that
Yeah.
issue.
The motion would add inoperable vehicles, so a truck coming in for repairs
Right, no, but,
is temporarily inoperable, but it's being repaired and it's got current tags.
Right. And so that would be in a different category. What I'm referring to is, say a truck is, crashed on I-90, but yet there's good things on the truck, and you can have it towed to your yard. You have up to 3 months to take off what you want off that vehicle, and then you have to get rid of it.
so, okay.
That's in the definition.
That's in our
If-
rules.
So by September 1st, 2020, he would have to apply if there's 3 or more inoperable vehicles.
That
He
have
would have
been
to.
there for longer than 3 months.
Okay, he
Right.
would then have to start the process to apply.
So we'll have to
Okay,
put a chalk mark on the
Can
tire
I
and
modify
put a
that to
date.
say that
Yes.
have been there for longer than 3 months?
is that
So you
okay
can-
with the seconder to add? And Attorney Sonneman,
I just wanted to, looking at the zoning ordinance, always going back to definitions. Definition of inoperable vehicle is automobiles, trucks, and other vehicles not currently licensed by the state, or which are, because of mechanical deficiency, incapable of movement under their own power, parked or stored outdoors. So the question of a trailer, that wouldn't come under that definition. So, yeah, just wanted to clarify that, and also what it means to be inoperable. Because we have had problems with other sites with vehicles that are not licensed sitting there, so, yeah.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to add a condition 10 that says, if 3 or more inoperable vehicles that have been there for more than 3 months are still on the property by September 1st, 2020, the petitioner would apply for a salvage yard permit. That's what we're looking at? Okay. Is there further discussion on adding a new condition number 10? Okay, so we're ready to vote. All those in favor of adding condition number 10 that says if 3 or more inoperable vehicles that have been stored there for more than 3 months are still on the property by September 1st, 2020, the petitioner would apply for a salvage yard permit. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Now, we have an IUP with 10 conditions. Is there further discussion?
I'll move to approve with the 10 conditions.
I'll second. Oh, no.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the IUP with the 10 conditions that we modified or added to approve that IUP as modified. Is there further discussion on the approval? Okay, all those in favor of approving this IUP application with the modifications of conditions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay, the IUP passes. Thank you. That was a difficult discussion, but I appreciate that. We worked through it all, hopefully to the satisfaction of, that's a compromise, nobody probably, but. Okay, item number 7.1, appoint Board of Adjustment liaison to the Planning Commission. That's on page 106 of our agenda. And this refers to the Board of Adjustment has voted to recommend Cherie Hales to the County Board of Commissioners so that she can be appointed as the liaison position for the Planning Commission. And there are draft minutes attached that discuss that business from the Board of Adjustment. So the recommendation is that we appoint the Board of Adjustment liaison to the Planning Commission. Is there discussion? Commissioner Ward?
I will not support appointing Ms. Hales to the Planning Commission. As previously I have stated, I think her history, going back in meeting minutes and going back into comments at public forums, that I don't believe she can be quasi-judicial in her role. So I will not support her nomination.
I'll make a motion to appoint Cherie Hales as recommended by the Planning Commission, or Board of Adjustment.
I second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer, to appoint Cherie Hales, who is the Board of Adjustment liaison to the Planning Commission. Is there further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to appoint the Board of Adjustment liaison to the Planning Commission signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes, so we're appointing the Board of Adjustment liaison to the Planning Commission as recommended by the Board of Adjustment. Okay, item 7.2, receive the Census 2020 update, and page 113. Boy, you sure know how to clear out a room, Bob.
It just makes me feel that this is not very interesting information. I'll leave that up to you.
Just so everybody's counted, that's,
Counting snowflakes out there today, Bob.
Oh, I know. Was out doing some shoveling early this morning, and I'm afraid it's probably not noticeable anymore. At 6 o'clock, I took a reading for the National Weather Service, and I had 7.5 inches in Pleasant Valley. Is that kind of what everyone's at?
that's a lot.
So I don't know where we're at now. We had a meeting with the Census Partnership Specialist on January 28th. His name is Jim Acuso. He was appointed by the national group that's heading the census to be the person in Minneapolis to work with local government. And so we invited him to Winona County, and he was here for an hour and a half or so and discussed the importance of the 2020 census and a complete count. And here's a couple of key items. Probably have seen these, but if you have, they're worth repeating. The census, like in 2010, is going to determine if we continue to have 8 representatives in Congress. It is possible it could drop to 7. We're in very close competition with Texas for that representative post. And so a complete count here is going to be very important, not just by us, but the entire state. A complete count is also going to mean more federal dollars for a variety of programs, and they range from school to housing and everything in between. And probably most important is a slight increase in our population as viewed as a very positive reflection on Winona County. There are a lot of groups that are looking and have made decisions to cite businesses, some educational initiatives, and other public projects in Winona County. And one of the criteria that they use often to do that is it a growing area? Is it an area that we want to venture into? If population is dropping and places are closing, they tend to want to look the other way. So this is very important for us. At the meeting, we had some of our key 2010 census partners, the City of Winona, City of St. Charles, higher education, and business. And by the next morning, we received quite a complimentary email from the census recognizing us for holding the meeting and for the very positive time that was spent. The census is looking into several questions that I presented. I've gotten response on a couple, but there's a couple of really key questions that we need to get information on. As far as our work with the census, we have been working with them since 2010. It didn't stop and then just start here a couple weeks ago. Some of the things that we've been doing, some of them are very technical, but others are, we provided the census with all new addresses in Winona County, and those most often correlate to more people, or at least people that are moving there from another location. New streets, new residential developments, updated city boundaries, and we have responded to numerous questions about parties that may or may not be living in a location, information we have, who the actual owner is. The census is working diligently to do what are called census blocks, and they're the basis for counting people, and it's incredibly important that they're accurate. So we've taken a real interest in that, and we've provided information. The 2020 census is going to be very different from 2010. is going to make history because it's going to be the first time that parties will be able to respond by phone and by the internet and numerous sites on the internet. Some of the details are still being worked out, but the long standard reply, and that was by mail, is still an option, but now the field has really expanded. So when we think back, we had a very, very big participation in 2010. We had 84% of our mailed out questionnaires that were returned. That didn't happen on its own. It was because of activity by our committee and a group of up to 200 across the county that were promoting it. So now with the 2020 proposal, what worked really, really well here is being given a number of options, and the census intends to mail only 20% of the population the hard copy form that they can fill out and return. One thing that was very positive, there were 10 questions, they were very basic questions. It took less than a minute to do the answers and get that back in the mail, less than a minute. That was a huge selling point. So it remains to be seen how quickly it can be done, on the internet or by phone and putting in the extra options that are going to be there. We're also, as of last week, we had not received the final questions for the 2020 census. It's still being worked on. They will become available a little bit later this year. But those are key. We want them to be as simple and as straightforward as they possibly can, because once they get complicated, people don't want to do that. All right, so there's a little bit about the meeting we had, a couple of the really big highlights of the census, a little bit about the change, and I'll just add a couple more things to that. When we received the 84% back, we were among the highest response in the entire country. That was huge for Winona County. We received recognition from the census in Atlanta for the accomplishment, and we can still be very, very proud of that. So knowing people responded well to that written one, it still left us, let me see, I think about 8,300 people that we felt were here, and we needed to count them. And like a lot of projects, those remaining 8,000 were the big challenge. And was the challenge worth it? Absolutely, because they were all needed for us to move ahead just a little bit. And our gain was, I think just rough figures here, about 1,400 in 2010. And we're gonna have to put an all-out effort in 2020 to hold the population we have. Census in December came out with some revised population counts, and I spent Martin Luther King Day going over those. And what I saw was that all of the cities and townships in Winona County are looking pretty similar in the latest estimate. The one that is having a challenge is the city of Winona, where the estimate is down. And I've asked the census for some clarification on that. They're working on it. I've been promised a response, but there's no date for that response. The city of Winona has a big part in their count of higher education. And when there are lots of jobs available, typically higher education enrollment drops. When there aren't jobs, enrollment is up because people of all ages, not just young people, people of all ages are picking up additional classes, additional skills. We're in one of those periods right now where there are lots of jobs available, the enrollments are down. They are down pretty much all across the country. So we still face that as a key part of the census count in Winona County. And the number that they're down is important, and can we offset that? And that's part of what is behind some of the questions that have been asked. There is a separate and unique group of census takers that do only group quarters. So in Winona, they would be responsible for all of the dorms. And in 2010, that was a little bit of a weak area for us. They were not as cooperative as the rest of the census as a whole. And that's why I'm trying to get some answers in the working relationship that we have with them. Winona State has been absolutely exceptional. They've already appointed a person to work with the census. A couple of months ago, President Olson talked about his view and what he is expecting in the next couple of years. And by birth rates, 2020 would have a higher number of potential students at Winona State, and they are working on that. So the reason I'm taking a few minutes to tell you this is only one area of how complicated the census gets. And if we're going to come out ahead in 2020, we're going to have to put a lot of effort into not only the students, but all the newcomers, the minorities, people that haven't previously been counted, have reservations about doing it. They all need to be counted. In 2010, we received quite a few grants from the census to make sure that the groups I just told you about were counted. 2020, as of today, there is no grant money available. So that puts a big burden on our shoulder if we're going to do the job that we did in 2010. So Ken and I are going to have a meeting. We're going to discuss this and determine our plan in more detail, but we really need input from the commissioners. And I think the census is critical, especially when you look at the 3 record years of real estate, commercial, industrial purchases that we've had, the numbers of entities that have chosen to locate in Winona, and maybe they're just a little bit ahead of schedule. I think a couple of years later, I think the people that are working and the people that are going to make those facilities successful, I think more of them would be here. I think we're being caught a little bit too quickly. So how do we do the best that we can do? I think there's a similar game plan to 2010, but in 2010, I want to be up front. The county put some dollars into the census, as did I and a few other people. So I'm interested today to hear if there's comments from the commissioners, and this is the update I have, but I want to come back with another update when the census responds to some of the key questions that I posed to them. And I'll be meeting with Ken too.
Okay, are there comments or questions for Mr. Bamanick? Commissioner Ward.
Well, first of all, thank you, Bob. I know you really take this serious because it is very serious to get the count. I know AMC, Association of Minnesota Counties, is working with the state representative.
State demographer.
Yeah, a very energetic, progressive individual. And I know they're coordinating some additional, I think, meetings and sessions across the state of Minnesota. So I think if we see where they're going with this, and of course, we partner with them because we're part of AMC, and that'll be a valuable resource. I guess maybe after your meetings, you can come with maybe a proposal, like you said, we put some money towards it last census. I don't remember exactly how much, what kind of dollars. I know we had some interns.
Yeah, I'd asked Bob to, that's why we're going to meet. I asked him to put a plan together
There.
so that we could kind of go over it and then bring it back to the board.
Sure, yeah.
But I want to be absolutely clear that I'm not saying that these dollars have to be spent. I think in order to be successful, we have to be realistic. We have to look at what we did in 2010. In 2010, the state demographers said that we were down significantly. And I knew in 2000, the census wasn't completed in Winona County. There was no interest. They didn't have the people they needed. They did an average and they moved on. And we were hurt. It wasn't accurate. So when it came to 2010, we had that history to deal with. We knew people were out there that had not previously been counted, and we knew if we put the effort in that we would do better. And in the end, we achieved that. But now that there's really a challenge in 2020. Some of those that we absolutely have to count require what they call trusted partners, people that speak the language that they're comfortable with. And we did pay some people in 2010 to do that. It's just like in the school system. they're faced with multiple different heritages and backgrounds. They find people that, can get the message and do the instructing. And we're almost in a similar spot. We can't ignore people because they don't communicate every day like we do. We need to reach out to them. They're part of the number. And that's part of that 8,000 that costs more to get them included in the count. But that's what it's all about. So you, I guess, can maybe understand why no matter what kind of an effort is made without some financial assistance to reach out to those many different parties and make sure we get the count, we're not going to come out ahead. And we did. We had 2 interns. They did receive a stipend from the county. We had 2 part-time people that worked some hours for the census. We had 6 students at Winona State that were paid by the census, one of the many grants that I got to promote the census. And we started out with a significant number of students on 2 different campuses that were from Chicago, and they were absolutely determined that they were going to be doing the census in Chicago. It's where you are on April 1st of 2020, and that's where you're counted. And by gaining some students to spread the word, and also some key instructors and key faculty at 2 universities, we did make a change, or brought about a change with the thinking of the students. I'm not sure it was 100%. We know a couple areas where we were soft. St. Mary's was a little bit unclear. We know that east of Winona State, despite 3 times the homes, we still didn't have the number we should have. So we go into the census with a little bit of that background. We knew where some soft areas were. I think one really big highlight to me, former Mayor Jerry Miller was a co-chair for the census in 2010, and earlier in 2018 he called and offered to be on the committee. And Jerry and I did a lot of house-to-house work. He has rapport with people of all ages, and I think that this is just really positive for all of us, and I've been wanting to share that with everyone. Okay, I didn't want to take a bunch of time today, but I really would, with the commissioners, appreciate your input and what you would be comfortable putting into to try to get this positive response in the census. And Marcia, one last thing. The census is going to be having training direct from the census, and I prefer to go to that training. The state is doing a real service because so many counties have not done census work before, and we really need that. And the state demographer is in a position to help. But the census right now is going to be doing some training for a couple of the Twin Cities counties. I believe that one of them is on the north side, northwest side, and there was potential for representation from our county to be invited to that. And they're also, at my request, looking at a training in this area. They have other training scheduled. They weren't sure the locations, so put in a request for our area.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 7.3, discuss and/or appoint citizen advisory committee volunteers. That's on page 114 of the agenda. I have one change. The application that was received under the name of Sky Schultz, as I was calling people, first of all, I was confused by that because Sky Schultz is I believe she's a senior at Winona Senior High School. So I called and talked to Sky, and she said she didn't know anything about this application and that it was probably her father, Matt Schultz. So I talked to Matt, and he suggested that perhaps it was autofill. He was kind of embarrassed, but the application should be in the name of Matt Schultz. Everything else in the application is correct, and the answers to all the questions, and so I would just ask that we change the name Sky to the name Matt.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have a copy of the bylaws of the Winona County Economic Development Authority for everyone. And on the second page, I would like to call the board's attention to Item number 2.7, just for the purposes of your discussion, as an extension of the EDA, 8 ex officio members, which represent a blend of township and city, may be appointed at the discretion of the county board. I understand you have more than one applicant. We have one opening for an official EDA member. An ex officio member would participate in discussion but not be allowed to make motions or vote. And they wouldn't be part of our quorum. We do have an ex officio member from the city right now, Lucy's McMartin, and others could be appointed as well. So I just wanted to point that out, and I had meant to include that in your packet, and the timeline got away from me. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 2 volunteers and 1 opening. Commissioner Ward.
Yes. So we're talking about the Economic Development Authority.
Yes.
Well, Sky or Matt, we'll assume Matt. I do like the idea of they work as an elementary educator at the school district, and then they also said they grew up on a farm in a rural community. The whole idea of elementary education worker is, I think, when you talk EDA, kind of entrepreneurship falls shortly after in thoughts about EDA. And I think we wait much too long in our society to put the idea into young children to be independent business people, to be entrepreneurs. I don't think we can wait. I know Winona State a couple of years ago, maybe more years than that, they started a class on that. But once you're in college, I mean, you can still do it. But I think to cultivate an idea, to have somebody in a capacity that works with the youth in our county at the school district would be a real advantage to getting that concept of entrepreneurship, EDA, early on. So I would like to appoint Matt Schultz as the official, representative. And then if we want to put the other applicant, Mr. Kennedy, as an ex officio, I'll make that a motion to appoint Mr. Schultz as the voting delegate, and then if Mr. Kennedy would like to be an ex officio member, we could do that.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to appoint Mr. Schultz, Matt Schultz, as the official, and Mr. Kennedy, Mike Kennedy, as the ex officio representative. Commissioner Olson, you had
One question over the asterisk. So Mr. Kennedy applied before the posted preference date. Matt Schultz did not.
What does that mean?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
Oh, the one was late?
he was late.
Well, it was an extension,
I just a question.
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we have a motion to appoint Mr. Schultz as the voting appointment and to appoint Mr. Kennedy as an ex officio member. I like both candidates, and to me this is really very reasonable with the amount of attention that economic development needs to have as we go forward. And also, Mr. Kennedy is a previous small business owner in the area. He's retired, so I think he brings a lot of experience also, and very different from Mr. Schultz. So I appreciate that we could add both of these volunteers as members of the EDA, the Economic Development Authority. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of appointing Matt Schultz as the voting appointment to the Economic Development Authority and Mike Kennedy as an ex officio member signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Okay, item 7.4.
Well, wait, I'm sorry.
Oops, we have several more,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So
Commissioner Ward, we have Extension Committee.
Right,
Yes.
we had one vacancy, and I would move to appoint Sydney Graydon to the Extension Committee.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to appoint Mr. Graydon, seconded by, with a second to the Extension Committee. Is there further discussion?
I think it's a female. I don't think it's a,
I'm sorry.
I think Sydney is.
Sydney is one of those names, right? Sorry, excuse me. I did not talk to Sydney, obviously. All those in favor of appointing Sydney Graydon to the Extension Committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Okay, we still have openings on the Personnel Board of Appeals and on the Stockton Rolling Stone Minnesota City Watershed, so,
And community service.
and Community Services Advisory Committee. So I would recommend that we re-advertise and possibly do some recruitment in the community. Okay, item 7.4, discuss and approve annual legislative priority statement on page, this is on page 122 for our agenda.
Yeah, can I just have a few comments before the board gets into looking at it? First off, this is what it appears to be. It's our statement of legislative priorities for this year to convey to the local legislators. But in reviewing it, the one thing that's come up is under the section of water, the area of water management. There, based on some feedback from the Soil and Water Conservation District and also from some of the commissioners, I think the intent of that list confuse things. So my recommendation would be off the top to change one word in that sentence under please support efforts of streamlining water oversight and management. The change where it says management is bloated, I think bloated is a little bit hyperbole, and I, in retrospect, think that probably should be taken out of there. But also remove the list and just stick with the narrative that's in that first two paragraphs, which basically says we should continue to look for ways and support ways to streamline efforts in water management and look for things that are overlapping or redundant. It doesn't pick any particular action on any particular agency. It just encourages the legislators to support items that move in that direction. And I think that's consistent with the state's move in one watershed, one plan to consolidate watershed districts and water management. And there may be other things that the state might propose that would be along the same lines. So there may be other comments on this document, but those were my initial ones.
Are we in discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Administrator Fritz. For the reason, some of those that you've addressed, I was sort of thinking that we should pull it all together. And I'm still thinking it's just a little too, it's unclear to me at what level we're talking about, right? And so, for example, I mean, in that list are things at the federal and the state and then at the local level. And I think, as I said to you before the meeting started, our constitutional and legislative authority comes to the states from the federal government. And I would not propose that we should streamline this and move water regulatory authority to the federal level because I want us to have local control. So I sort of feel like this is just lacking in the specificity that the other items have, and that before I would want to put it on here, I would like to see it be maybe vetted and have a little more specific information in it. I was looking earlier this morning and at sort of what has been done at the state level, and I think if we wanted to direct this to our state legislators, that would be one thing, and if we wanted to direct it at our federal legislature, that would be sort of a different thing, and if we're talking about what happens here in Winona County, that again is sort of different. So the state actually did fund a study a few years ago to talk about this very issue and came up with a set of guidelines and recommendations, and you're right, One Watershed, One Plan was one of those. But there are some others, and I'm not sure how much of this has been implemented. My thought was that when I looked at this is the first time I've seen this kind of a document. When I looked at the other items, they are very specific. The one that just precedes this one is about the METS system, and it talks about some really specific things that are time consuming or taking staff time, et cetera. And all of the items on here have really been vetted by the departments in the county where we have staff with expertise in this area. And so in the same way that soil water came back with a bunch of changes, I would really like to see our staff help us vet any specific statement so that we are, confident about its specifics and confident about who it's directed at. So I'm sort of feeling like I'd like to see it kind of pulled and maybe discussed more in depth. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that was my initial response also, that, first of all, it had not been vetted by county staff. I would have to have some clarification because you suggested we remove the list, but much of the narrative refers to the list. So unless we remove most of the narrative, we're only left with clean water is an important natural resource and should be protected. That's our only rationale. Because to me, the rest of it refers to the list. And so we would have to remove all of that narrative, leaving us with clean water is an important natural resource and should be protected, which is sort of a given. But
Yeah, it would require some, again, this is the board's list, or in the list, there was the board's memo, board's position. So, we crafted this based on a number of input points, including county commissioners and staff. So this is exactly what we need to do, is to work it up to get it to the point where it's acceptable to the entire board.
yeah, I think if we went to the MPCA guidelines and recommendations as a starting point and have that reviewed by staff, we could easily come back with some specific recommendations or positions on water protection.
We had talked before, I didn't mean to interrupt, but we had talked before about maybe having a working session on water management and the direction, because there's been some difference of opinions in how to address that in water management. And rather than continue to bring staff-driven kind of one-time issues which need to be acted on, which then end up being policy discussions, it's better to probably meet as a group in a working session and talk about the policy toward water management.
Okay, I would recommend that we would have a working session on water protection, and that we start with the MPCA guidelines and recommendations from that study.
Okay.
And that we delete this. Currently, there still could be recommendations added.
Yeah, and again, we do this, each year. It's, kind of at the same time that AMC
Well, we
does
have
theirs and
recommended
everyone
a
else does
working
theirs.
session in the past, and it has not come to fruition.
So the question, though, is this Daryl Buck's opinion, or was this a document from the Soil and Water Conservation District?
Yeah, it's a good question. I just was handed it this morning, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But even this wasn't the only question about the list, and I got some from commissioners as well. So,
Yeah.
no, I have no problem. I can remove that, and then the rest of it, I think so far the feedback's been okay. So.
Yeah. So we would remove that section and
Yeah.
schedule ourselves a working session.
Yeah, we'll fit one in
with
along
staff
with.
and soil and water.
Yeah, probably
Okay.
because of our working session schedule, probably a little towards summer, but yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay, we can still.
Yeah, I would support that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, is there any further discussion on the items in this narrative, in this?
Other than to say thanks for taking the time to put it together. And
Yes.
Yeah.
drawing, especially this stuff that is, like state systems that are causing our staff trouble. I mean, to drawing that to our attention and helping educate me about that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And you should just be aware, and I know you are, but the county staff is involved through their professional associations to a higher degree than is reflected in there. Whether it's the highway engineer or community services or whatever, the county attorney's office, we're all involved in our professional associations and work through their legislative arms as well. So,
Right. Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, with the AMC Ledge Conference starting tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
and such, they have hired new staff, so it's going to be important to make contact with those new staff, and then we can share this with them on all our assigned committees and everything, and going forward, and kind of make the
might have
link.
to do that in Skype because I don't think I'm going to make it with the weather.
Yeah, this weather is not.
I appreciate pulling that together, and I think especially with the timeliness for tomorrow or tonight, there are hearings tomorrow that could be addressed in some of these, so I think that'll give us some good direction to start with. I also brought it to the attention for Mr. Fritz that there was a position, and that's now been filed as a bill. It's Senator Abeler, A-B-E-L-E-R, and he has a bill which would consolidate or change the funding mechanism for human services and put it under a block grant proposition. So that's a Senate bill. I don't know if there's a House bill, and that's working its way through some of the Senate committees. So we need to be aware of that and possibly have some discussion on that in the future, because that's one of our issues, is the issue of funding for human services. But we're not, I don't know if we're ready to support a block grant position. AMC had some discussion about this in their recent update, which I saw yesterday. So they really don't have a position on it yet either. So everybody's just kind of following it. So I think this will help as we go up tomorrow or tonight or whenever. Or never, depending on the weather. So is there any official action on this? Do we need to?
No, this is more of a,
Okay.
concurrence kind of thing.
Okay.
At least the way it has been in the past.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that work, Mr. Fritz. Item 7.5.
Bob had a question.
Oh, Bob had a question. Sorry. Do we need to put something in there about the census?
No,
No.
second to the last page of the different proposals. Earlier in the budget session, I was asked to look at additional fees, potential for additional fees. And we really have quite an outstanding one at the top of the page. I say outstanding from the standpoint that big dollar amounts in the recorder's office are not very easily achieved when it comes to adding more money to the budget. Senator Miller emailed immediately after I forwarded this to him and Representative Pulowski, and wanted to know if it had formally been adopted by the county board. So I was hoping that you would do that today. And he also asked if it was being supported by AMC. So I think just letting you know that our senator wants to see those approvals, and hopefully he will, take some part in possibly moving it forward.
Well, if you'd like, you could adopt it, and then I'll send a copy to the AMC, and as well as, of course, our local legislators.
Okay.
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would move that we adopt
Yes.
the what do we want to call it? The
Just the legislative priorities, Winona County legislative priorities.
priorities.
Yeah.
Yes,
As modified.
right, as
Yeah, as
modified.
yeah.
Cool. There also is a proposal working through, there's a bill working through that would change the auditor position to an appointed position for counties.
It will allow you to.
Would allow you to do that. Okay, so, and currently ours is elected, so I think we need to watch, I don't know any position that we have on that, but that's in the works to allow that as an option.
They're trying to put that as a state versus having each county come to the legislature each year and ask.
Yeah, okay,
It'll be an option.
that's good background on that. Okay, so let's move on the.
So we need to vote to adopt.
We need to vote on adopting this package,
Yes.
including.
Second.
Okay,
Modified,
we have a motion and a second to adopt this as the platform for Winona County. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you for your work on that, Mr. Fritz. Item 7.5, this is on page 129. Mr. Moga has a finance and budget update for us from December 2018.
I'll start with the December revenue under revenues. December revenues starting out were 15.5 million. Actual revenues were 1.9. Actual expenses were 3.3. Ending cash was 14.1 million. For the year, we started out at 14.3, had revenues of 20.5 million, and actual expenses of 20.8 million, and ending cash was 14.1 million. Variance in the general revenue fund was a negative $240,000 compared to last year, $1 million. And if you look at the very bottom, the variances were a negative 840,000 compared to a negative 1.3. There was a transfer from the general fund into the human services fund, which we approved, I think was at last meeting at the 1.174. So that was, and that's actually reflected in these numbers. Do you have any questions on this document? If not, we'll look at the summary cash flow. Beginning cash flow was 19.6 million. Actual revenues were 47.2 million, and actual expenses were 48.2 million. Ending cash was 18.6 million. Again, the variance is kind of similar to the last previous page. Any question on the summary document? If not, we'll look at the summary budget. Looking at anything that went over the 100%, and we do actually have the general fund and human services that went over the 100%, and the general fund is due to the transfer to the human services. Any question on that? Thank you.
Okay, any discussion, any questions? All right, thank you very much. Let's go on to the committee reports and communications. Commissioner Ward, did you have anything you wanted to add or make an announcement about?
Well, just real quick, yesterday we had the Southeast Minnesota Emergency Communications Board meeting, and that's a multi-county jurisdiction about our 911, armor, and all those things. And they're moving forward. One of the things that they legislated a few years ago, they increased your fee on your cell phone from 71 cents up to 98 cents. It was a difference of 17 cents to cover bonds to pay for the whole armor structure. Well, that's going to sunset, and they're talking about reducing it back to the 71 cents. I said, we should be lobbying to keep that 17 cents, because what can you buy for 17 cents? You know, I don't think you can go to the store and buy anything for 17 cents anymore. Do they make penny candies anymore or anything? But anyway.
I've seen the dollar store, but not the 17 cents store.
Yeah. But I said, because it's a group of county commissioners in law enforcement and where you call in, dispatch people and everything. We should lobby to keep that 17 cents because it generates millions of dollars, because we're at a point where we're going to have to upgrade all these radios. You know, all these radios we bought are starting to get old. We have to replace them. And they're looking at expanding this FirstNet for more data versus just communications. So I did ask, maybe we should just lobby to keep that 17 cents there instead of reducing it. And their answer was, well, the cell phone companies will fight you because they want to lower your bill. I have a hard time believing that because cell phone bills just keep going up and up and up.
They're pretty
but again,
anyway.
a small mechanism to increase public safety, knowledge and keeping the people safe that do public safety and keeping the public safe. I think people could afford the 17 cents. But I don't know if they're going to do that or not.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer?
Yep. I wanted to tell you all that I went to the AMC County Government 101. It was a 3-day event, and there was a lot of great presentations. I will share the link with Administrator Fritz, so if anyone wants to refresh their memory about how county government is organized, how we should be working with our administrator, what the role of employees are. There's a whole lot of great topics. So I actually got quite a bit out of it, even though I was sick during most of it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. I have a handout from, this was from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, and this is not playing cards, but a series of cards put together by NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They're an education and an advocacy and a support group, which is quite a lot of roles to play. We have a very active local committee. We have a very active state committee. But these are communication cards. The pink one is compassionate communication, and it's even got some possible statements to make. You're not alone in this. I love you and I care. Always good things to have at hand. The blue card has suicide risks and suicide warning signs, which are not necessarily common sense. Some of them are, but some of them are really kind of hidden issues. And if you start to see a number of those together, you might start to apply some of those pink statements. And then the yellow card is someone who's actually in a crisis or who has a psychiatric illness. And there's some very good suggestions there. Anybody who's had these kind of conversations with people or been through this knows how important these are. Years ago, when I lived in northern Louisiana, we actually invented a crisis line for our local community. And in the whole time I served on the crisis line, I actually did take 2 that I thought were legitimate suicide calls in a very small community. So I appreciate that training. I'd also like to point out there's a set of do statements for the person in crisis and a set of don't statements. So both of those are very are critical for someone who finds themselves in that position, which is truly a crisis. So that's just what I've added. I'm also planning to attend the legislative meetings in the next several days. Don't know about the weather and how much that's going to impact on that program, but I looked at the AMC legislative update, the MICA update, and the NAMI update specifically as some of the 3 updates that I'm carrying with me for and there's also, the MICA update has quite an extensive list of hearings and sessions. Some of them are listed for today, so if anybody is inclined to go up early, but just point that out so you could go to the MICA set. There's, 12 pages of committees and hearings that are scheduled this week, actually. So that's a really important piece to take with you. So I think that's all the updates. Okay. Take a motion to adjourn, and we have to also go into closed session, but.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer and seconded by Commissioner Olson to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, we adjourn. Now I would like pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03, Subdivision 1B, to discuss strategies for labor negotiations for, and there's several organizations, WCHSEA, AFSME, AFSCME, the courthouse unit of AFSME, and AFSME 65, and the LELS 64 and LELS 61. So I'll take a motion to.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to proceed to closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, so we'll come back to close the closed session.